Hi, if you've been doing EFT long enough, you know that you have to look for the attachment intent behind the protective moves. Or maybe you've heard, what's the attachment significance? What's the attachment longing? Use attachment reframes, attachify, right? It's like all of these attachment is like swirling around. And sometimes it can be a little bit of a misattunement if a client is not really ready to talk about their deep longings. Maybe you want to go for that attachment significance and you sort of try something on like, oh, because this person is so important to you. And the client's like, that's not, yeah, but actually I'm just pissed. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes, we really need to actually slice it a little thinner or kind of maybe meet them where they are a little more. And instead of going for the big, deep attachment longing, you can think about what's the goodwill, right? So it is in the same vein. Eventually you get to attachment significance because we can assume we do what we do for good reason. There is an attachment, fear, or longing under all behavior. We know that, but sometimes it's just a little bit too much of a jump to actually get curious about that. And so if you're tracking the cycle and you're looking at the protective moves, another way to think about it is, what's the goodwill, right? You can, like, for example, I had a client who the protective move, this particular client actually, made jabs, like said pretty hurtful things to their partner. This was actually a withdrawer. And so the client was feeling criticized and feeling judged and kind of like had this counterattack. And I wanted to get really clear, and I wanted to be curious about like the goodwill, even though that's a terrible, terrible protective move. This client was not proud of it. This is like the worst version of them. And it only happened when they got really triggered. And they actually didn't do it in session. It was the story that they both told that happened outside of session. But I said something like, so what do you think if we just kind of get curious together, what do you think you're actually, I know it's like terrible and you end up pushing your partner away and that's like not ultimately what you want, but what do you think what do you think that move is trying to accomplish? What do you think you're trying to do? And this person said, I think I just want it to change. So it's almost like this desperation, right? It's like, obviously it's not going to work, but it's an attempt to have it change. So that's a great example. There is goodwill under this awful reactive move. Of course you want it to change. It's miserable. This cycle that you're both in where you feel further from each other than you've ever felt before, and you don't feel like you can get it right, or doesn't matter what you do, it's like somehow you're further away. Of course you want it to change. So that was like a big changing point. This person ended up enacting that, this is what's really happening for me, and actually ended up just sort of organically talking about their longing to feel close. The context was sex. And so it was like an eye-opener for both partners. So does that make sense? You're really wanting to assume goodwill. If attachment longing is a misattunement, or it's like it's not quite where they are, think about it in a different way. What's the goodwill, kind of the good intent? And you might get a little bit closer to that actual attachment significance behind that protective move. Okay, if you enjoy these short little videos and it's helpful to you, consider joining my webinar series. So this is an ongoing subscription. $10 a month. You cannot beat that. And it's 1 hour monthly webinars where I'm using deliberate practice to really break down specific interventions, and we actually practice in the webinar, and you get to see role play, you get to see like very, very specific, and you have one takeaway after the webinar that you can bring into your very next session. I'm having so much fun doing it, and I really want to see you there. If you want to join me, click the link below and subscribe.